census. So the 2020 census is very important. As you know, PAC has been on the forefront of trying to get everybody to make sure we're getting out the count in our community, in the Arab community. And this is a really big, important year. It's the 2020, it's a census year, and it's also super important because it's the first time that we are able to write in our ethnicity and our racial background. So this is super important as Arab Americans so that we can get our voices heard and get out the count in our communities for our future. So what I'm going to go over today is basically the 3 ways that you can fill out the census from the comfort of your own home. You may already know, but you can fill out the census online. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen. Okay. And we're going to go over the different ways that you can respond to the census. So first and foremost is the traditional paper form, which is seen here, if you can see the screen. This is what has been mailed out for decades, historically speaking. This is the form that has been sent to people's homes. Now, for those of you, for this year, most of you may not have received this form. You were receiving an invitation to respond, which has a number. But if you have received this form, don't worry, we're going to go over how to fill it out. So this is a sample. Obviously, it says that right here. It's an informational copy, but this is pretty much how it will actually look. And it's pretty self-explanatory. So essentially, the census is going to collect demographic information to produce statistical data to help your community. And it gives you step-by-step instructions. Now, the paper form is only available in English and Spanish, which is one of the things that makes it less accessible for our community, because if a lot of us, are immigrants who speak Arabic, it's kind of hard to navigate this way. But we're going to go over the other forms, which are the online and by phone, which are available in Arabic as well. But for the time being, bear with me, we're going to go over this here. So before you answer question 1, count the people living in this house, apartment, mobile home using your guidelines. So the guidelines for this is super important, but you have to make sure that you're counting every single person, even little tiny babies. If they're living in your home on or before April 1st, they count for the census. So you want to count all people, including babies who live and sleep here most of the time. If no one lives and sleeps at this address most of the time, go online or call the number on page 8. So that's when those are like special exceptions. Let's say you're a homeowner and it's an empty house that still receives mail. You rent out the house usually and there's no tenants currently living there. That's when that would apply to you. So that's when you would go to the special directions. You'd visit the website. For the most part, if you're receiving this at your home, it's probably because you live at this residence and you're going to be filling this out. This applies to everybody who lives in the home, even despite immigration status, citizenship status, none of that. If you live in a home, whether you're a renter or a couch surfer, you count on the census. So that's really the first most important fact, okay? So after that, we're going to move on to the census must also include people without a permanent place to live. So if someone who does not have a permanent place to live is staying here on April 1st, count that person. So let's say you're living in an apartment building and a friend of yours decides to come crash on your couch because they've been kicked out of their house. And they've been there for 6 months now and they have nowhere else to go, put them on your form. Even if they're not a permanent residence, if that's where they've been staying for the most part, and they don't have a different permanent residence, you want to put them on that form. So college is a special case even now. So this is super important. With COVID-19, a lot of college students who usually dorm have been moving back home. So parents are kind of asking, do I count my son or daughter on the census form if for the most part they're living on college campuses? Because in a regular normal census year, what happens is colleges count the individuals who live on a college campus. So if you don't live with your parents and you're going to school, you don't count at home, you count at your college campus, because for 10 months of the year, that's where you're living. That is still true even given the COVID-19 circumstances. So even if you usually live on a college campus, but you're home now because your university is closed, you are still being counted at the university by the university. However, if you're unsure, you can count yourself in 2 places because, again, it's better to have an overcount, as the U.S. Census Bureau has mechanisms in place to kind of determine where there's an overcount. It's better than having an undercount in that scenario because they can decipher the different counts. You're not going to count anyone in a nursing home, jail, prison, or detention facility for the same reasons. If they're in your family, but they don't live with you for any reason, whether that be in a nursing home, jail, prison, detention facility, etc., they're being counted at those institutions. So don't count them. Again, if you're unsure, you can count them again, but you know, the rule of thumb is that if they're not living with you for a majority of the year, they do not count on your census, even if they're family, even if they're your children, your sister, your brother. And again, you leave these people off your questionnaire, even if they return to live there after college or nursing home or military or jail. Again, just reiterating that point, you do not want to count them twice because they are going to be counted at college and a nursing home, military, or jail. The Census Bureau has different relationships with these institutions to make sure that everyone's counted. So now the first question starts off very basic, very simple. How many people are living or staying in this house, apartment, or mobile home on April 1st, 2020? This is where you're going to do a count of every single person who lives in your house, right? This is super, super, super important. Even little children. A lot of people don't count their kids because they think it's for 18 up. If your kids, even if it's a 6-month baby, they count because you only do this once every 10 years, right? And that 6-month-old baby is going to need resources for growth in the 10 years to come. So think about it in that term and you'll be able to kind of better differentiate who counts and who doesn't. So you want, let's say you've got 5 people, you're going to put 5 people live in this house. We'll put 0, 5 in the boxes right over here, okay? So then you're going to go to question 2. Were there any additional people staying here on April 1st that you did not include in question 1? So again, this is kind of like if someone was visiting that you wouldn't, that like don't actually live or staying in the house. But it's very rare that you'll fill this out unless you have a special circumstance because of COVID-19 or like a special circumstance in that case. So you'd put how many people live in your house here, and then in number 2, if there was anyone that doesn't usually live in your house but is staying at that point, you want to mark up why you haven't included them, such as non-relatives, relatives, such as adult children, cousins, or in-laws. But again, for the most part, anyone who's living in the house will be counted in question 1. And number 3, in this house, apartment, or mobile home, it's going to ask you if someone in the house owns the property with a mortgage or a loan, or it's owned without a mortgage, it's completely paid off. Are you renting or are you occupying without payment or rent? Now, a lot of people are a little apprehensive. They don't want to check off the honest answers. For example, for occupied without payment of rent. A lot of people are scared because the census, they don't want to get in trouble. But your information is protected by Title 13 of the US Code, which states that anybody who gives out your personal information to anybody, which means anybody outside of the US Census Bureau, cannot have access to your information for any reason. And if someone violates that, they are faced with up to 5 years of prison or $250,000 fine. So not even the President of the United States could pull up your personal census information. So if you're living as a squatter in an abandoned house, make sure you're filling out that you're occupied without payment of rent. No one's going to track you down. No one's going to ask you why you're sitting somewhere where you shouldn't be sitting. It's really just to collect demographic information, statistical information, and it's completely protected by federal law. So your information is protected. Answer as honestly as possible. And that goes for even question number 1. No one's going to hunt you down and say, why do you have 50 people living in a 7-bedroom house, right? If you've got 50 people living in a 7-bedroom house or 50 people living in a 2-bedroom house, that's nobody's business. Write down 50 people and no one's going to come knocking on your door. No one's going to find out any personal information. So feel free to put that in, okay? What is your telephone number? Now, the Census Bureau will never call you first. They'll only contact you after you have initiated contact with them. So if the Census Bureau has called you before this point in your form process, then it is a scam. It's not someone you should listen to. However, if you filled out your form, the Census Bureau may follow up with you. And if in case there's something wrong with the form or someone they feel is not being counted, they'll follow up with you. But they'll never call you first. So you're going to put your phone number here, right? So if they need to contact you, they can. So then it goes by person by person. The paper forms have a limit of 10 people. it's kind of a shortcoming of the form. So paper forms, again, are only available in English and Spanish, and then a lot of people don't really like the paper forms because there's a limit of 10. Some households have more than 10, you know, especially in our community. I know that I live with different family members, live with aunts and cousins, you know, we're very family oriented. So you might not live with just your immediate family, and that's okay. So if you need more than 10 spaces on your census, this is when you would go online or you would make that phone call and fill it out over the phone, but we'll get to that as well. So now you're going to go through person by person, and this is where it might take 10 to 15 minutes depending on the size of your family, right? So if you live with 2 people, it'll take you 2 minutes to fill out this form. If you live with 15, it might take you a little longer just because it takes time to fill in this information. So it starts off, please provide information on each person who lives in the house. If the owner or the person who pays the rent does not live here, start by listing any adult living here as person 1. So you want to go from the, I guess, homeowner or renter, but if they don't live there, then you will put the oldest adult, the oldest individual who lives in the house. So you're going to put, for example, my name is Tala Ismail. I'd put first name Tala in the boxes, my middle initial is Ali, A for Ali, and then last name is Ismail, Ismail, spell it all out in the boxes, right? What is a person 1's sex? You mark X in 1 box. I would mark female. What is person 1's age, and what is person 1's date of birth? I would write here 23 years because on April 1st, 2020, I am 23 years old, and then I would put in 08/26/1996 because that's my birthday. Now this is the interesting part here. And again, it says actually for babies less than a year old, do not write the age in months, write 0 as the age, but do count them. So if you have a 6-month-old baby again, you would put 0 years, but you'd put their birthday. So make sure you count your babies. So then I think this is the cool part for me personally. You want to answer both questions. So now we get to race and ethnicity. These are the questions. So is person 1 of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? You'd answer appropriately based on how you identify. So I would write no, not of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin, and then I'd move on. If you are of Hispanic, Latino, Spanish origin, you would read through the options and you would check off the box that you most identify with. Cuban, Puerto Rican, or Mexican. If you're not Mexican, Cuban, or Puerto Rican, you could check off yes, another Hispanic, and write it in. It has examples: Salvadorian, Dominican, Colombian, Guatemalan, Spaniard, Ecuadorian, etc. So you'd go through it like that. Now, what I love about this form is that for the first time ever, we can put in some other race, right here where my cursor is. So what I think is great about this is that in the past, Arabs have been considered white, according to census data. And that is because of historical trends. And if you look at the history of the census and the history of citizenship in this country, you had, at one point in history, you had to have been white to be a citizen, and this, that, and the third. So the way that things developed historically is that, you know, Arabs wanted to be white to get citizenship. But however, as time progresses, we see that we're not, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the whole Arab community, but personally, as a Palestinian American, I don't feel as though I don't feel as though white represents me accurately or adequately. So instead of checking off white and then writing off my origin, I would scroll down to where it says some other race, and I'd put Palestinian, or you can put MENA, like Middle Eastern, North African, or you can put Egyptian, Tunisian, whatever you identify as, this is where it would go. So you check off some other race, and then you could put off whatever country you're from. I would put Palestinian in this case. You can put Arab if you want to be broad, it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it comes down to what you feel comfortable with. I don't want anybody to ever feel like they're pressured into completing the form in a way that they're not comfortable with. So of course, whatever your comfort level is what you would do. I prefer to be as specific as possible for reasons of political representation in the future. I want Palestinians to have a voice. I want Palestinians to be heard. I want people to know that we matter, that we exist, that our votes count. So I want to put Palestinian so that if someone runs for office next year and they look at the census data and they say, wow, there's a lot of Palestinians in this area, maybe my policy on foreign affairs should shift in such a way that would allow them to follow. So it's really just about your representation. and having your voice be heard. Again, for the non-Arabs who may be watching this, you just go through it and you put whatever you identify as. If you're Black or African American, you check this box and you put your country of origin or your ethnic background. American Indian, Native or Alaska Native, same thing. You check it and then you put your origins. Same thing for the Asian Americans, right? So we go down. So that's it for each person. That's really all the information they're going to ask you. They're never going to ask you for Social Security or any credit or debit or money information ever. So if the form that you're looking at says your Social Security number or credit card, rip it up, it's a scam, and then call the Census Bureau or call PAC, and we can help you report that. Because the real census form, as we're seeing right now, only asks these questions and will not ask you anything else, like your Social Security or anything about your money, credit score, debit card, credit card, none of that, okay? And now essentially, you repeat the process for everybody that lives in this home. There's a couple different questions in it. So for example, if my dad were to fill out the first one, because he is the one who pays the bills in my house. So let's say my dad were to fill this out as Ali Ismail. We'd scroll down and then he'd fill this out for my mom next, right? So he'd say her first name, Wissam Ismail, and then it would say, does this person live or stay somewhere else? For the most part, for filling them on their census, they should all be staying with you. So no, they usually live with you, right? How is this person related to person one? So opposite sex, husband, wife, spouse would be if my dad was filling this out and my mom was the next person. And then he would put, if I was the next person, he would put biological son or daughter, depending on the relationship. So it's very self-explanatory. Whoever's filling out the form will fill it out for these people. Now, for someone who's not related, let's say your tenant, you're living in like a basement apartment and you don't get mail directly to your house, so you don't get a census form for your personal apartment. Your tenant will have to fill out the census on behalf of you and include you and whoever lives with you in their census form. If they are the ones filling out the census, in that case, they could decide other non-relative or roommate or housemate when they're filling in your information. Again, this is completely protected by federal law. The only reason they want to know this stuff is for demographic information, so they could figure out, statistically speaking, how many Americans are married, how many Americans are in same-sex couples, how many are in opposite sex, how many have biological children, how many adopt. It's all about statistics. It's nothing about who you are and personally what your preferences are. So it's just to kind of understand statistics for demographic information, for data, for research purposes, for funding purposes. And representation. And again, you go through, this is where it kind of starts to repeat. What is this person's sex? What is a person's age? Is this person Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? And then it goes back to the same thing. And again, if same family, I'd put some other race for Palestinian if I'm doing my family again. Okay. For person 3, same thing, it repeats, right? So like I said before, it's going to repeat up until person 10. So you can put like the first 6, it will take all their information, and then anyone after 6, it's just going to take the very basic information, like last name, first name, last name, birthday, sex, and relation to the person, yes or no. Again, it only goes up to 10 because it's a paper form, but if you want to include more people, you would log online to 2020census.gov and you would fill out your census that way. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Once you've completely finished this is just a Spanish form if you want to see it. Once you complete this, you would mail it right back. You could go drop it off at the post office, or you would just fold it up and put it in one of those blue post office mail carriers that are, in the public areas. Really easy, simple ways. You don't have to add a stamp or anything. It's already paid postage. So that's how you'd go about that. So that's the paper form. Okay. So now responding by phone, I can't really demonstrate how to do it. But what I can show you here, if you're looking at my screen, is how you would get to this page to respond by phone. So you'd write 2020 census.gov. Okay, here we are. How to respond. You just scroll right down to how to respond, learn how. And if it would load, it'd be great. Okay. So you'd get your how to respond. You scroll down a little bit more. There's the online response guide. There's the paper mail response guide, which is what we were just looking at. So we just did paper mail, so you go to phone response guide. Here we are, responding by phone. Very simple. So you'd scroll down again, and you'd call this number right here, 844-330-2020. If you would like to call a number based on language, because like I said, the paper form is only available in Spanish and English. However, over the phone, you have the option of 13 different languages. As you can see, it's a nice variety, but here's the Arabic number. So it's all on the same page. So if you want to call and have someone help you fill out your census, complete your census over the phone, you would just come down and you'd scroll down the page and you'd find the Arabic number. What I'll do for PAC is I'll send this out in the next newsletters and post it on our social media. So if you guys are looking forward to using the phone to respond, you'll have that option. And then you just click it and it walks you through it over the phone. It guides you right through it. So there's nothing I can really go over. The questions are exactly how we just saw on the internet, on the paper form. So all the questions are the same no matter how you complete your census, right? So that's how you'd respond by the phone. So how would you do it online? Now you have to complete the online form in one sitting. It does not save, so you can't go back to it. So once you start your online form, you do have to complete it, but don't worry, it's very simple. You're going to click respond. And then just like we went over, and this is on 2020census.gov. Now, if you want to change the language, because this also is available in 13 different languages, it's pretty cool. I'm very excited about it. I'm a little dorky, but it's okay. You would just, so I'm going to show you actually just so you understand from like the very beginning. So if you're completely coming into this blind, you're going to go to 2020census.gov and you're going to click respond. And you're going to go to this tab that says language drop down. When you swipe over it, you're going to pick the language of your choice. Here's English, Espanol, and then you go to Arabic. And look at that. Now you're ready to go in Arabic, so I'm going to just show you the Arabic form real quick. So we did the paper form in English. The phone one I said you just have to call the numbers. There's two different numbers for English and Arabic, but again, you would just go to 2020census.gov, how to respond, and you click the phone option. And then for this, you go to 2020census.gov, respond, change the language to Arabic in the corner. If you're looking at your screen, it's going to be the top right corner where it says English. You're going to click the drop down, it's going to go to Arabic, and you'll have this page that comes up. My Arabic is not very good. So we're going to talk about how you would fill out the census. So it's the same exact information. It's going to ask you the same exact stuff. So when you're doing the online form, it might ask you for a census ID. Now, the census ID is what is sent to your homes. So if you didn't get a paper form in the mail, you should have still received an invitation to respond. That invitation to respond has a 12-digit code on it. That 12-digit code is your census ID, and it helps you so that when you open up the census, some of that demographic information is still filled in already. It might take less time for you to do it, but if you don't have the code, it's totally okay. So let's say you didn't get anything in the mail, but you want to complete your census because you want it over and done with, you can still respond without your code. So you just click that, and it takes you, and you start going through it, right? It's easy peasy, 10 to 15 minutes. And then it's the same exact questions. You go through it in Arabic. And again, you count everybody who lives in your family or in your household, and that's pretty much it. It takes no time. I've already done my census, so I can't actually go through the steps with you. I would love to, but my dad's already completed our census. He takes these things very seriously. So yeah. Overall, I just want to say thank you for watching this if you've watched it. If not, you're missing out on a great opportunity to help your community. Please, please, please make sure to complete your census, guys. Super important stuff. Make a big difference in your community. It's really, really important that we do this for our communities. Great opportunity to kind of just help everybody without doing much and leaving our home. Census funding is used for schools, roads, healthcare, the whole nine. So especially right now in this time of like the COVID-19 crisis, it's super important to do your census because you know, we sit here at home, at least I do. I sit at home and I'm like nervously scrolling through my phone trying to figure out like, oh my God, what's going on now? Have we flattened the curve? Do we have enough ventilators? Do we have enough hospitals? PPE. I mean, I'm also an EMT, so I'm always thinking about, do we have masks? Do we have gloves? Do we have protection? I don't know what to do. Fill out your census so that we never have to worry about funding ever again. So that hospitals are always full and ready with PPE and ventilators and hospital beds so that your population is accurately represented. Oh, wow. So your population is accurately represented and that you can get healthcare facilities, healthcare clinics, Medicare, Medicaid, all these things that are super important right now during this pandemic. The weaknesses of infrastructure that we've seen in healthcare, these are all things that can be mitigated by completing your census. So please do your census for your community, help out. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at tismail@pacusa.org, at tismail@pacusa.org, and or text the census hotline, or visit pacusa.org and click on the Census 2020 tab for resources and links to complete the census. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Complete your census, we count.